beautiful. Thank you for that. Lovely, lovely. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Temple, for that remark you made about the erasing, what doesn't work for us anymore. I love that. I just attended my first Burning Man festival. Been a bucket list item for a decade. And there was an installation there where somebody had created a giant chalkboard with chalk for people to write on. And the caption was, "Your fears erased here daily." I just thought that was brilliant. All right, I'm going to jump right in. So 3 years ago, I moved from Asheville, North Carolina, to Santa Cruz, California. And it was a decision that was complicated by the fact that my twin brother lives in Santa Cruz, okay? And has for 40 years, okay? And moving to his town would require that we not only run afoul of a long-standing policy that there ain't no town big enough for the two of us, meaning we need our own turf. But it would also, I thought, trouble the ghost of our mother, who instilled that taboo in us with her insistence, I mean from the day we were born, that we would have separate identities. Okay, so no Ron and Dawn stuff, okay? Or as my father used to say, Pete and repeat. And he said if we had been born girls, it would have been Kate and duplicate. But, I mean, we had separate bedrooms, separate classes in school. We had to take up different instruments, different hobbies, go to different summer camps, even different bus stops. Okay? Different bus stops. So when I first told my brother Ross about my interest in considering Santa Cruz as a place to relocate, and shared with him my concern about violating this lifelong taboo, he shrugged. He said, 15 years ago I probably would have agreed, but I'm over it. And then one day, during a month-long experiment in dating Santa Cruz, all right, living there for a month to see if it was actually a fit, I went into the grocery store around the corner from his house, the one he frequents, and when the cashier asked if I wanted a receipt, and I said yes, she said, "Really? You never want a receipt." So I got to say something I say a lot in Santa Cruz: "I'm not who you think I am," which is one of the highlights of my social life. I'm not kidding. It happens all the time. He's been there for 40 years. He knows everybody. And the look on people's faces when I say that, "I'm not who you think I am," just smoke coming out of their ears. I'm his twin brother, and no, I'm not pulling your leg. I'm the twin who always wants a receipt. Okay? Later that same day, Ross went into the same grocery store, just independently of me, stands in the same checkout line, same cashier says to him, "Oh, I saw your other half today." Not realizing what a loaded remark that is for a twin. Which half are you? Okay. So, oh, somebody's getting a calling. Yeah. So that night, Ross shared with me that he had the first of what turned out to be a number of nightmares about the prospect of me moving to his town, featuring, among other things, he said, in one dream an avalanche, in another dream a mudslide, and in a third dream a Tyrannosaurus Rex tearing up the town of Santa Cruz. Okay? So turns out he was not over it. And neither was I, because the taboo against living in the same town was among the longest standing stories of our life together. And we were not just going to edit it out without some backlash, all right? But the only way to grow beyond that story was to confront it and to hash it out. To hash it out. You can't just erase this stuff. You have to you have to have some conversations about it with yourself and with whoever might be involved in changing a story like that. And this is, we all have stories we tell ourselves about who we are and how it is and what we're capable of and what can and can't be done, why we succeed or fail, what we can expect from life, all right? And I think we do it because we're storytelling animals. And we create stories to help us figure things out, make sense of life, give us a framework for making decisions, all right? But those stories can sometimes turn against us, especially the negative or the constricting stories, all right? I'm not the creative type. I'm powerless to change the world. I'm a victim. People are untrustworthy. Vulnerability is weakness. 1,000 iterations, of course, right? These kind of stories that are kind of constricting. And they are self-limiting, I think, when they come up against what I think of as life's primary agenda, which is to grow, all right? And, you know, they undermine our belief, as we have here in the New Thought world, that we are each an expression of God, and therefore sacred and worthy. And some of these stories don't exactly support that theme, okay? And this is especially true when the stories that we tell ourselves become lies of identity. You know, I am what I do. I am what I have. I am what other people think of me, okay? And they're not just big stories like that. Anytime you catch yourself having a strong reaction to something, okay, or someone, sudden anger, unexpected defensiveness, irrational fear, I think you're probably dealing with a story that's become so internalized and unconscious that you don't even really hear it anymore, all right? Somebody makes a casual remark. It reminds you unconsciously of something your father used to say to you. You're just off to the races. You know, you're not even really seeing things as they are anymore, but as they were, all right? And I think stuck in a story that's probably just going to keep repeating itself, if my experience is any indication, until you confront it and maybe even deconstruct it to some degree, okay? By the way, there are some negative stories that I think are really important to tell. I don't mean to just sweep any of this away. Stop telling yourself negative stories. Some of them are critical to share. I'm thinking, for instance, of the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that were set up in South Africa after apartheid, and how critical they were to the healing and the justice that happened there when the victims of apartheid got a chance to publicly share their stories of victimization. So I don't want to just suggest stop telling yourself negative stories. Some are really critical to share out loud, okay, and with the larger culture. But anytime, these are not just old stories either. I think we are constantly making up stories as we go along through life. We're constantly making up stories about what we think somebody is thinking. You know? What a friend meant by a remark. What a failure says about us. You know, what a symptom means. We're always making up stories, okay? Anytime you tell yourself you should do something, I suspect you're probably dealing with a story. Anytime you hear a thou shalt not in the back of your head, probably a story. And certainly anytime you refer to the story of my life. This is usually, right, this is usually said in exasperation. This is a statement of pessimism of some kind, like, ugh, that's the story of my life, okay? That bears some looking into, I think, all right? And of course, they're not just personal, they're cultural. They're cultural stories, like big boys don't, or nice girls don't. These are gender stories that can haunt your individual life, as are cultural narratives like go to school, graduate, get a job, get married, have kids, retire. Okay? May give some people a template to use in crafting a life, but it might also punish anybody who deviates from it. Okay? Or create unrealistic expectations around pursuit of the American dream. All right? And stories are also handed down to us from our spiritual traditions, of course. Or maybe more to the point, the religious education a lot of us got. When I first was introduced to the New Thought communities, this would be in Toronto, Unity in Toronto, I wasn't familiar with the denomination at that point. And I asked, who comes here? Who attends this church? And the minister said, well, about 50% of our people are recovering something or others. and he was referring to religion, not addiction per se. But, you know, here's an example. The first 5 books of the Old Testament, okay, collectively referred to as the law, there are 613 of them, including do not marry outside of your religion. All right, it includes create no artistic representations of God. So what that means is that the painting that Michelangelo did on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, you know this one? Blasphemy, according to that storyline, all right? It includes follow not the whims of your own heart. This would pretty much put me out of business, you know, because that's kind of what I specialize in with the callings work especially. No tattoos, no blowing on dice, no talking to the dead. So this means that those intimate conversations you might occasionally have with the dearly departed, no, right? No working on Sundays. I think this would put me and Temple in the doghouse. Yeah. No rebelling against your parents. And here's one of my favorites. No trying God's patience. All right, how about a show of hands? How many of you have ever tried God's patience? All right? So, but whether the stories we tell are personal or transpersonal, I think a story is a box. And when you identify with it to the point of being stuck, or spellbound, or when you no longer believe that you are sacred and worthy, you're inside the box, all right? But when you start to even question the story, you're outside the box, all right? Not that this is easy to think outside the box, no less step outside of it. Stories are powerful, and they shape our lives, because stories become beliefs, become behaviors. It seems to be the way I've noticed it that it goes. Stories become beliefs, become behaviors, okay? You know, as we say here in New Thought, stories become thoughts, become experience. It's kind of like that idea, all right? In other words, we don't just tell stories, they tell us. They tell us who we think we are. They tell us what we're capable of, and every telling rubs it in a little bit more deeply, whether the stories you tell yourself are negative or positive. Of course, I'm thinking of, say, affirmations, okay? But the negative ones are a narrowing down. This is what I've noticed it does in my life and the people that I've talked to about their stories. It's a narrowing down, it's a constriction of soul and spirit and potential and passion, all right? It's too small for us, I think, is what I've noticed for myself. The stories are too small for me, all right? Now, expanding them, and therefore our lives, I think begins by catching them in the act, all right? Beginning to notice the stories that you tell yourself. Really beginning to, there's a guy that I ran across named Dan McAdams, and he is a psychologist. He belongs to a branch of psychology called narrative therapy. All right, this is specifically designed to help people change their storylines. Narrative therapy. He says, and this is how he languages it, you should interrogate yourself. Interrogate, okay, about the stories you tell yourself and quit letting them have their way with you, okay? I'm thinking of something my parents used to occasionally say to me and my two brothers: watch your language. I think that's actually a good starting point. Watch your language. Listen to how we talk to ourselves. What tone of voice do you use when you're talking to yourself? Right? What do you say? And how would you feel if somebody else was saying to you the kind of things you say to yourself? You're not the creative type. You probably wouldn't like it very much. Maybe wouldn't even stand for it. Okay? And because we are always creating new stories, I think it's important to watch how you craft them, how you get them going. Okay? McAdams says that people who tell stories about challenging events in their life, all right, but with a redemptive twist, something you learned from that experience, some wisdom you wrested from it, all right, something you learned from the experience, you will tend to thrive more over the course of your life than people who just tell negative stories about challenging events, right? Early in my career, I lost a job at a newspaper. And I initially just called it a failure. And that was the story I told about it. But over time, I realized that it was precisely by getting fired from that job that I gained the motivation I finally needed to become a freelance writer, which is a calling I had heard for half a decade at that point and just ignored because it's scary stuff. But I realized that I was able to, by focusing on the redemptive twist, I was able to change it from a story of failure to, if not quite success, at least falling up. Is that sort of intuitively, you get that? Falling up, okay? I'm not just the protagonist of the stories I tell. I'm the narrator, all right? And I'm in charge of the stories, which is one reason why I've discovered it is critical for me to separate fact from fiction in the stories I tell. Fact from fiction, okay? My parents divorced when I was 9. Might be a fact, is a fact. It's my fault is a fiction, all right? My father was critical and emotionally absent, might be a true story. And again, it was. I'm unworthy of love is a false story, right? There ain't no town big enough for the two of us might once have been true, no longer is, okay? So you might ask yourself if some of the stories you are telling yourself, and this is something, by the way, we'll identify in the workshop this afternoon, but some of the stories you're telling yourself, not only are they true, but how true? How true? Because even a shred of contrary evidence, you know, a minor exception to the story, right? A small crack in its logic, another way it could be told, for that matter, from another point of view, might give you that all-important shadow of a doubt that can help you question the truthfulness of the story and sort of unhook you from the limitations that you're setting for yourself by telling them over and over, okay? Here's an example. I have made a regrettable, possibly tragic number of life decisions that started and ended with the phrase, I can't afford it. Sound familiar to some of you? I can't afford it. Which just grinds into my subconscious a message of self-imposed limitation. This is a rap on the knuckles of the cookie jar kind of thing. What is more accurate is I won't afford it. I won't afford it. This adds into the equation, of course, the critical elements of choice and power. I would prefer to spend my money on car repairs rather than a new computer, right? But what a big difference. Big difference, all right? Let's say you have a story, and of course, we've all heard this one. It's one of the most common human stories, it seems. I'm not the creative type. But under scrutiny, you begin to notice some exceptions to that. You go out into the garden, and you pick flowers to put in a vase, and you bring them inside, and you put the yellows in the front, and the purples in the back, and the blues in the middle. you're being artistic. You doodle while you're talking to your dad on the phone. You're drawing. You sing along with a car radio. You are singing. You write a letter to a friend. You're writing. You know, when you dream at night, your unconscious is essentially playwriting. You're playwriting. So maybe you begin to realize, wow, actually I am the creative type and always have been. So you look for the little exceptions, and maybe the big exceptions, to the stories that you tell. And again, I'm offering a gracious bow here, how tough it is to change storylines. Because you're not going to just change a story you may have been telling yourself for the better part of a lifetime at the flip of a switch, and without some blowback, right? Meaning, changing stories is going to ruffle feathers. And just to build that into your expectations, you're not just going to flip a switch. It's going to ruffle your feathers, and other people's. One last example. I'm hiking in the Santa Cruz Mountains a couple of years ago with my brother. We are having a debate about how susceptible we are to cultural conditioning. All right, started because he made some bold statement about being immune to advertising. And I went, oh, really? So to make a point about how susceptible I thought we actually were to advertising, and not just the consumer kind, but the cultural kind, I dared him to hold hands with me until we reached a bend in the forest path, I don't know, 100 yards up or something like that. And he reaches out his hand, accompanied by a look that roughly translates to, I call your bluff. So here's the thing. There was clearly nobody around. There was nobody around. But the next 10 seconds provoked an outbreak of reflexes that would have put Pavlov's dogs to shame. I mean it. Self-consciousness, awkwardness, embarrassment, paranoia. Pure conditioning based on a story about how straight men are supposed to act in public, at least in this culture. Based on a script about how we're supposed to behave, all right? All we were doing was holding hands, really barely pushing a toe across the line as these things go, and all the alarm bells went off, you know? And you know, the weird thing is, we look almost exactly alike. How suspicious could this really be? You know? And besides, we're doing it in Santa Cruz. Who cares? You know? Wow. And I wouldn't be a proper twin either if I didn't report to you that he broke first. Sorry, it's just part of the story of being a twin. But changing stories is hard human work. Compassion is in order. Patience is in order. And a sense of humor. You know, you may have to tell yourself a different story a dozen times, 100 times, before it really begins to sink in and hold sway. All right? So patience is in order. But the truth is that until we begin to notice the stories that we tell and confront, if not deconstruct, the core perceptions that are at the heart of those stories, the behavior that grows out of them is not going to change. It was only by dialoguing with myself and with my twin brother that we were able to grow beyond that storyline that had pursued us our entire lives. And realizing that we are not the children we were when that story got set in motion. All right? So now we live in the same town for the first time since we were boys. And it is truly one of the great joys of my life. One of the great joys. Thank you. So I just want to say in closing that in the spirit of upgrading our stories, I just want to say that the workshop this afternoon is a hands-on opportunity to gently but stout-heartedly look at some of the stories you may be telling yourself, especially those that may hold you back from what wants to emerge in your life, from knowing that you are sacred and worthy. So I hope you'll come. And thank you so much, Temple, for inviting me back, and thank you for all the support I've gotten so far. Thank you, guys.
Let's give him another round of applause, please. Yeah. And stay this afternoon and be part of it, because in Florida, a lot of times people wouldn't stay, if it wasn't raining, because it was a pretty day. Here we don't have that story. Right? Just saying. And, there's another story that happens, too, when it becomes time for the offering, right? Because there's a culture thing about the church is always asking me for money, and I find that fascinating, because nobody says that about the restaurant. All right? When you go to eat at the restaurant, do you go, you're not going to ask me for money, are you? Right? Or the theater. Every time I want to go, they want something. They want something from me, yes? So part of the beauty of unity is to teach abundant living. As Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman used to say, that in Chicago, there were so many people that appeared to her that were impoverished and became extremely wealthy people. You might wonder why. Why? Thank you. Why is because we teach that as you give, so you shall receive. And so really to represent a community that in many cases, especially my story, is that unity saved my life. This coming week, I get to celebrate and honor 35 years of sobriety. Thank you. Because of the teaching of the unity principles. Yes? And how much is that worth? I don't know how to put a value on that. To be alive, right? And to be vibrant. So everybody keep breathing, it's okay. We're not going to come to you individually. Come on. As our ushers are coming forward, and as our unity singers are coming up, let us affirm together our offering statement with joy and with an energy of love. Shall we? Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I share. Thank you, God.
And the world would be a better place.
And so our prayer team will be available right after the service out at our beautiful, gorgeous fountain. They will be there to hold sacred space, lovingly listen to your news story, and hold it in confidence. How's that? Also, this evening, the architect and designer of our Unity of Santa Barbara campus, as you may know, has received the beautification award of Santa Barbara County as the commercial property, and that, yes. So what an honor that is. As Gregg said, the afternoon workshop is $30, and then there's also food of a suggested $10. Money well used for changing a life story, yes? Next Sunday, we will begin, one of my passions is a pet adoption ministry. So we will have dogs available for adoption next Sunday. And the idea and the thinking as we move forward is that we're not always so quick to say, well, I'm not really looking for a dog. I bet you know 4 people that are. So we learn to collectively spread the word, but they are extremely excited that Unity of Santa Barbara wants to do this as a campus, to be leading edge for other spiritual communities in the city and around, because it's so effortless to do. So that's this coming Sunday. October 2nd, we're going to have a dear friend of mine, former music director, Wanda Nero Butler. She's traveled with Aretha Franklin and all the greats. And on Saturday, she's going to be with our entire music team for the day. And on Sunday, she will be here during the service, as well as Sunday evening, we're going to do a concert. So it's going to be absolutely amazing. And that's October 2nd. Next, Friendship Sunday Expo. Wasn't last week amazing? Yeah. So the next one is October 9th. So that's Friendship Sunday. That gives you several weeks to go out and make some friends. Okay? And if you have a few extra, give them to me and BB, because we're new here too. Like Paula said, she's new. I said, good luck, so am I. So anyway, now we have a beautiful video from Patricia Diorio. She's here in the house. She's giving a workshop this week. So thank you, Jim, for playing that.
Hello, Unity community. Patricia Diorio here. I'd like to say right off the bat how excited I am to be reunited with the Unity work and with the Unity community, with you. It's been wonderful to see old friends from years ago. So I'm delighted. And my biggest inspiration, of course, as is probably most of ours, is our 2 new ministers, Reverend Temple and Reverend Kathy. I'm so impressed with them in every regard, and I think that they're a wonderful, progressive leadership team for us as we move more further into this 3rd millennium. So I'm here today to tell you about a wonderful book and a workshop that I'm going to be presenting on Wednesday night, this coming Wednesday, the 21st, from 6:30 to 8:30 in the sanctuary. It's called I Am the Word. And it's a channeled text. The authors identify themselves as ascended masters whose assignment it is right now to help humanity through this difficult transitional time that we're going through. So it's channeled by an amazing fellow by the name of Paul Selig. And he was a professor at NYU, and now this is what he does full-time all over the world. The work is amazing. 2 things I'm going to share with you about it, keeping this very short, is 1, it's about frequency. It's about increasing the vibrational frequency of our body as we hold the book, as we read the book, as we listen to the book, as we work with the book. And it has been my experience in these last 7 years since I've been so committed. The second thing I want to share is that it's helped me move from believing that I'm divine, that we're all divine, to knowing that I'm divine, that we're all divine. A belief is different from a knowing. Belief is in the intellect. Knowing is from the heart. So I hope you'll join me Wednesday night and hear more about this. And I have some wonderful stories to tell you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Patricia, will you stand so that people may connect with you after, please? Thank you. Beginning October the 11th, we are going to start on Tuesday through Thursday. We're going to be open. Our Wi-Fi is going to be expanded. We're going to have coffee, have people meet and greet during their lunch hour and whatever. So this place is happening, right? Right. Yeah. When we look at our culture, a lot of the changes that have happened in culture are related to food around it. And so Reverend Kathy, part of her passion was to bring a program called Gourmets for God. And so Gourmets for God, you can sign up, and the idea is that you become a creative host, so it gives you an opportunity to practice what Gregg was saying today, to become creative. But you sign up to be a host, and you pick a theme. A couple of you can co-host, but you pick a theme, and then people bid to be able to come to your home or to wherever you may have it. Sounds pretty fun, doesn't it? So get engaged, because relationships build. You get to meet new people, and it will really make all the difference. I know, don't you love it? With me filling in for Forrest, don't you love all the announcements I have? I'll be taking tips after the service today. I'll be standing up front, and I'll take cash, checks, cars, whatever you may have. But I am working my way down, okay? So you really are going to make it. Just hang in there. All right, so Reverend Michelle, we're so blessed by Reverend Michelle Hubbard. She and I met many years ago. She's a teacher on the online university that I founded, and she's just a great human being, and we're just so glad that you're part of our community. She has picked us to spread. Look how she glows. She's got her batteries on today. You got your batteries on today. Okay, thank you. Here.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Temple. The tip is in the mail.
Thank you. I'll take it.
I want to let you know our metaphysical spiritual experience is meeting every Thursday here in the sanctuary from 10 to noon. And last week we focused on forgiveness and the Hawaiian forgiveness practice of ho'oponopono. And if you want a review of what those 4 steps are, we have business cards that have the 4 steps on them at the welcome table. And this Thursday, we're going to be stepping into the space we cleared through forgiveness and seeing what's emerging and how we can expand it. So I would love to see you and have you join us. It's a creative and interactive prayer and meditation service.
Thank you. And now let's stand. See, you survived all that. Let's stand and do the peace song and our unity prayer. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as Creator, and we all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be our moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. I'm going to give you today a beautiful quote by Yogananda, yes? Yes. Do not be afraid of germs. If you are electrified, your germs will become electrocuted. You got it? Let us affirm together our unity prayer. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Bless you, everyone.